Yo, yo, yo. Hey, guys, welcome back to another awesome edition of the Best Practices Show podcast. You ever thought to yourself, man, I need to know more about my data in my dental practice. I need to find a way to make this place healthier. Well, today, we're going to walk you through that process. I bring on a great coach. Her name is Robyn Theisen, and she's amazingly brilliant. And we talk about winning with data, the 7 practice KPIs to illuminate practice health. You have to listen to this. It'll make your practice better. I promise. I hope you guys enjoy it, and we'll see you soon. Hey guys, welcome back to the Best Practices Show podcast, where we're always looking at ways to improve your practice and your life with great insights from great thinkers, great coaches, great teachers. And we're going to do exactly that with an amazing coach today. She's one of the most brilliant people ever. Her name's Robyn Theisen, and she keeps me on the rails as far as data goes. And we're going to be talking about winning with data, the 7 practice KPIs to illuminate your practice health. Robyn, thank you so much for being here. I always appreciate you.
Oh, thanks for having me. It's always a pleasure to chat with you for a few minutes and give our people some more information.
Oh yeah, we're going to be on here for more than just a few minutes, which you're So for those of you that don't know, Robyn is a brilliant lead practice coach here, and she's more than that. She brings an incredible wealth of knowledge and understanding behind the numbers in the data. And so one of the cool things about what I get to do is I get to hang out with her, and she teaches me a lot of stuff. But I want you to start here, Robyn. You coach practices all day long. Why is it important to really understand KPIs for practice health?
Well, we need to know if we're winning or not, or what our goals are. So it gives us an idea of if our standard of care, the things that we have in place, the beliefs that we have about who we say we are we doing them? And the way that we know them is through numbers. So numbers don't lie, and it gives us a place to look at, either celebrate our wins and look for opportunities to look for ways to improve the numbers we have.
Yeah. And you've been coaching, just almost as long as I have. The whole numbers thing has changed over the years. I mean, 26, 30 years ago when I got started, it was all about money, and it really wasn't all about money, but sometimes that's what team members heard. So if you're a dentist listening, you might be thinking, oh, I don't know. I don't like talking about numbers. It's critical that you talk about numbers, because numbers, there's no emotion with numbers. They tell you what's going on. You can make changes. You can quickly cut through the cloud of subjectivity with numbers. It's really important that you at least embrace this journey with numbers. Don't you think, Robyn?
100%. And numbers, like you said, numbers are not emotional, and team members associate them oftentimes with a negative or a positive. And I really view them as they are. It isn't, this is where we're starting, and we have an opportunity to change it. If we think it's a negative, then what are we going to do to make it different so that we look at it and are happy about what the number shows us?
Yeah, absolutely. And so I've shared this on the podcast many times. Raising 4 kids, one of my children, my son, is type 1 diabetic. And no matter what he says he's doing, the numbers tell us a story. And I get that he's working hard. And so him, and the doctors that oversee his process, we all can make adjustments on that. Same thing with grades with kids. Same thing with anything lipids. All these numbers give us the opportunity to create something that's a little bit more healthy. So walk us through this process. Where do I start, Robyn?
So the first one that I'm going to talk about is the gross production. So I'm going to shout out to Ariel, one of our coaches here, and the advice that she would give is to charge your full fee. So the production is measuring your output potential, or it is looking at everything that is posted to your ledger. What did we actually produce in a day? And so that is the first number to look at. When I say charge the full fee, there are the other option would be to charge what insurance, put on your ledger, or have the output be what your insurance fee is. And I think that we miss a lot of information by not charging the full fee to really give us an idea of what our gross production or our output potential is.
Yeah. And output potential, you look in terms of time. This is actually one of my favorite. Now, there's inherent challenges with gross production. Number one, not charging your master fee. A lot of people don't know what that means. Even if you're 100% PPO and you're listening to this podcast right now, you should be charging out your full master fee, which in some cases might be twice what the PPO will allow. And that's okay, because there may be a day where you're not on the PPO and you don't want your patients to say, wow, your fee went up 100% and now you don't take my insurance. You don't want that to be the narrative. The other inherent challenge with gross production, and you know who you are if you're listening, is you're a dentist who's a really nice person and you don't charge any fee at all because you have your sister in and she is in for 2 days while you prep the uppers. And you're like, well, she's my sister. I'm not going to bill that out or charge that out. And at the end of the month, you're like, well, we didn't make any money this month. And, and your team members are like, well, your sister was here 2 full days while you did all of her uppers and you're complaining like you don't have any. When you put it in the computer, it shows you how you utilize your time. It shows us how you utilize your time. And you can start to be elective with your write-offs, which your sister might be one of those people, right, Robyn?
Absolutely. And for patients too, it's important that they see what you are giving them. When you are doing a write-off of some sort, it's important that patients know the value of what they are receiving for free. So I would say never charge a $0. You never want to charge nothing, and always charge your full fee.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And Miranda brought that up Friday at our To the Top. Nothing should ever be zeroed out. Nothing.
Correct.
And so even if you have a detailed list, we're going to talk about KPI number 2 here shortly, but you have things that you write off or adjustments. Make sure it's extremely detailed, because even that data tells you so much. Yeah. And again, I'll speak to the dentist who's listening. What you do is you sprinkle your elective write-offs with your required write-offs all over the place, and then you do a sum total at the end of the month, and you're like, I don't like this. What you have to do from this point forward is do it very intentionally. So take us into KPI number 2, Robyn.
So the second one is your write-off percentage. And so for this one particularly, I think being the more specific that you can be about your write-off categories, the better. So just to your point of the different insurance companies, I see a lot of offices that will have insurance company write-off. My offices, what I recommend is to have a Delta write-off, a MetLife write-off, a Cigna write-off. It gives us information about what fees you're receiving from our insurance, what the write-offs are. And as you're making decisions about whether you're in or out of what network or how you want to have that relationship with PPOs going forward, knowing specifics about each insurance company is really important.
Yeah.
In addition, you're going to have different write-off categories. So your sister, the elective write-offs that you have, it's important to know what percentage of that is. If you're having to do warranty work, what percentage is that for the year? So being specific and really knowing where those write-offs come in is important to make some decisions around. Yeah,
absolutely. And you always recommend the more detailed, the better on all of these. Yeah, because these questions come up. What about, hey, Robyn, I'm on a membership plan. Would that be considered a write-off? I'm on 1 or 2 different types of things like that. You would put those as separate line items or separate write-off, right?
Absolutely. And within the membership plan, I like to separate into hygiene and restorative write-offs as well. A lot of times with membership plans, the hygiene is considered free, or you're paying for it at a discounted rate because it is part of that. It's the fee that you're paying to be a part of the membership plan. So I want to separate that from what am I writing off for restorative work, or what are the savings that I'm giving for the write-off for the restorative work within that membership plan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd be very careful to put it all into one big bucket. We have something that's called the payer wheel in our dashboard for our practices via Dental Intel. And what that means is sometimes people say, well, I'm only participating with, Delta, Premier, or, Cigna or whatever. And when you pull the payer wheel, you're going to see there's 20, sometimes 29 to 30 different types of payers. They might be this particular insurance from another state. And so it's important that you segment those as much as possible and train your team to do that, because again, at the end of the day, end of the month, or end of the year, you can see how hard you're working. Now, one more thing before we go on to the next one, which leads to the next one, is that we're finding through talking to so many people that write-offs are skyrocketing. And some practices are writing off as much as 42 and 43%. Now, we didn't see that prior to the pandemic too much, and we still don't see it, but we're seeing it every once in a while, and that's just out of control. And what you're doing is you're forcing the discounts to go at a very high level, which is driving your costs and pinching the stress that you have. So it's important to know this percentage, and then quarter over quarter, year over year, if you're at 42% write-offs, or you're at 33% write-offs, that means you're working 1 out of every 3 days for free, for sure, possibly more. And so don't let that upset you, but let's go from 33 to 23 with the help of a great coach like Robyn. And now we can start to work smarter, not harder, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And something that you've talked about before is even practices that are fee for service, there are going to be write-offs associated with a fee for service practice. If they're 100%, not writing off anything to PPOs, there are still elective write-offs, membership plans, senior discounts. There are still some other things that are going to be there. I know we've talked about having what we see is around 10% is for a fee for service practice. I don't know that I see much lower than that write-off, or that's average for that type of practice. There's still going to be write-offs associated.
Yeah, we have so many dentists in the accidental community that they'll restore the priests in town, the police officers, teachers, but they choose to do that in an elective fashion, and their fee for service, and all of them are at 9, 10, 11, 12% because it's a very important part of their business give back. But as you can see, it's extremely intentional, and they keep track of that. Now that leads us to KPI number 3, which is what?
Right. Which is your net production. So it is your gross production minus your write-offs equals the net production. And that is your revenue potential. So that is what you would base the collections off of, is your net production. It's the revenue potential that you have within the practice. So, that's an important number. I know there are some that would say the only number, gross production, isn't as important as net production. And I disagree. Gross production is where you start. We need to know what the potential is and be able to evaluate the write-offs, know where we want to continue to do that, where we need to make some tweaks to get to the net production or what we can collect on.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I'm very biased on this, but your net production is the collectible production after all is said and done. And I'll just warn you that if you have a great dental CPA, which there are a few of them great out there, they're looking at what hit your bank account and comparing it. So they have no idea, unless you have a great one that understands what gross production is. So you might collect $1 million a year, and at the end of the year, you made $218,000. Now, ADA just published their new data in the United States. The average GP that owns their own dental practice made $218,000, and it's going down from 10 years ago. So here's why I tell you that data. If you're telling your dental CPA to say, how am I doing? They are comparing you with the averages. And that is not why you're listening to this podcast. You should never compare yourself to the averages. You should be very aware of your numbers. Your net production is critically important, and that's your revenue potential. What else do I need to know about net production and how it works in a regular dental practice?
It's looking at take your gross production minus your write-offs, and that's what your net production is. So that's what we're basing your collection percentages off of, and it is the revenue potential. So what you can bring into your practice from a financial perspective and from a monetary perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So you got to know these numbers, and you should be collecting, which we're going to, now I mentioned the term KPI. Everybody always asks me, what's a KPI? Key performance indicators. Sorry, I didn't bring you all into that, but these are numbers that are critical to your practice. And that kind of leads us to data point, or KPI point number 4. What is it?
So that's your collection percentage. So that's looking at the percentage in your practice of your net production that you actually collect. And this is a number that I see often that when I'm initially talking with teams or with doctors, that they say, "Oh yeah, we're great. We bring, collect 100%." And this is one that quite often it's lower than they expect it to be. And so which makes it a really great reason to have this as one of the KPIs that you're looking at, to make sure that you're collecting 100% of what your potential is. You've produced it, you've assessed the write-offs, and now you're to the net production. If you're collecting 95% or 96% of that, that's a huge difference. It makes a huge impact on your cash flow for the year.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, and I'll give you point and scenario if you're listening, because you know who you are. Again, I'm having fun with you, so don't get mad. But if you're a well-meaning dentist and you're like, I got Sally. Sally's been up front forever. She's been there for 20 years. She knows all the patients, and our net collections is 95%. You're leaving 5% on the table. So if you look at the disparity between gross production and, net production, which would include your write-off percentage, plus we're still leaving another 5% on the table, you're just working that much harder for that much more collectible dollars that hit your bank account. And what we like to do with this is, I don't want to make anyone ever feel bad, but these are what we call opportunities. So any practice we're coaching, if it's at 95%, let's go to 96. Let's go to 97. And in some cases like that, Sally might be able to collect 101% or 102% because, you know why? She's got a great coach like Robyn telling her what to say or how to say it. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. And the collections doesn't fall on the team member, as with most of the KP or the front office solely. As most things that we talk about, this is a team one. This is a team opportunity. So if you've got, you're not bringing them to the proper handoff at the front desk, or we're not having the PIT conversation, the pit stop, those all impact our collection percentage. So it's not just the responsibility of the business team or a reflection on them or what they are not doing. It's really an opportunity to look at our whole system. How are we collecting? What are our financial arrangements, and how do we handle this within the practice?
Yeah. And we just say this because our podcast, this goal is to create a helpful information just so that you can think better about your practice. And so the danger of being a dentist, going to a meeting is like, I got a $1.5 million practice. I got a $1.5 million practice. That means absolutely nothing, because one practice A, might be writing off a third, which means they're collecting $1 million, while practice B is like, no, I'm a $1.5 million practice and I collect $1.5 million, and I don't work as hard as practice A does. So knowing your numbers is important. And I would also say this, you don't have to compare yourself. What you have to do is start somewhere. So, the first piece of any change process is first telling the truth. And part of what we do is an assessment. And it's funny, but it's not funny. A lot of practice, owners will say, well, I do this. And then when I get the numbers back, I'm like, you're kind of close. But knowing the numbers tells you so much, and you can improve them. And so I think that's really important. And, so just knowing those up front makes you a better practice and much more healthy. As you can see, we didn't talk really about big dollars or anything like that. Just knowing these numbers will ultimately create a healthier situation for your practice. So, Robyn, what's KPI or data point number 5?
So this is the new patient reappoint percentage. And I would also add into this, I like to look at the hygiene component of this one as well. And so, you're talking about the doctors that say, I produce 1.5 million and all these things. I think another metric that we talk about a lot is I get 85 new patients a month, or I get 40 new patients a month. And we don't know how many of those actually stay. Right. We're not tracking how many people are reappointing, so we talk about that number, and that number really means not a whole lot unless you know how many people are actually coming back.
Yeah.
And so looking at the reappoint percent, and I like to be even more specific, like I said, to know how many patients are coming back into hygiene. The hygiene is where we're not going to lose them. They're going to be part of our recare process. We know they're going to be coming back in. And it is an opportunity with a new patient to talk about how important hygiene is and build that value in hygiene so that they know when they come back how important that is within our practice.
Yeah. Knowing this number and making it healthier every month, I promise you will make your practice better. Now, some of you are like, no, we get every new patient. No, you don't. Okay. And I've heard numbers bigger than that. Some people tell me, I get 200 new patients. Well, first of all, that sounds terrible. And sometimes new patients are the worst. Now, I agree you should always have a healthy number of new patients. That's critical. But here's what happens to a lot of dentists that listen to this podcast, because they're listening to other things. They're going to Pankey, Coyce, Dawson, Spear, and you've learned how to do a comprehensive exam, which is so important. And some of you over time have said, all my patients go through a comprehensive exam. Well, that's true. And so you get a great new patient, calls on a Tuesday, and you get them in for a comprehensive exam. And you find out they need $12,000 worth of dentistry, in the first meeting that you have with them. And now your treatment coordinator is stalking them over and over and over again. I've sent her 3 voicemail messages. I've texted this patient. The patient wasn't ready to hear the $12,000 treatment plan. And what's worse is they're not tethered to the practice with a hygiene appointment. So here's a little tip. It doesn't matter how you bring the new patient through the practice. That's your choice. But they should always have an appointment for hygiene. Sometimes patients will call your office and you see immediately that they have to be referred out. This one's got to go to the oral surgeon before we do anything. But before I go to the oral surgeon, you're going to have a hygiene appointment. See how that works? That way you're retaining. They have to be tethered somehow, some way. So if you have your team members listen to this podcast, just tether them to the practice say, even if you're like, they got to come through the doctor, that's great. I'm going to set you up with the doctor. I would say to a patient, if I was working at the front desk, and I'd be the worst front desk person of all time, I would say, Mrs. Jones, I'm so glad you called. Now, 2 things we're going to do before you get up. Hang up. I'm going to schedule 2 appointments. Our doctor likes to see patients in a comprehensive exam. Let me explain what that is. And I'm also going to schedule a hygiene appointment. And I'm going to set you up with Robyn. She's one of our amazing hygienists, blah, blah, blah. That way you knew exactly what to expect before you got off the phone, thus retaining more of those patients. Am I on the right track, Robyn?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. I might not be the worst front desk person of all time with your help.
What I would also add to that is where I see the most new patients leave is through the doctor's schedule. And I get assistants and doctors that say, oh, they're here for an emergency. And those are the people that need you as a hygienist. They need your hygiene team to not have those emergencies anymore. So it's that opportunity. It's something that they don't always think about. And so those emergency patients are opportunities to get them into your hygiene program.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about value, and I believe with cancellations and no-shows that it's a value problem, not a cancellation problem. And so if a new patient comes in and we don't talk to them at all about hygiene at that first appointment, how important is that appointment? So now when we're trying to talk to them 2 or 3 appointments later about coming into hygiene, we've lost an opportunity to really talk about the value and to know how important it is to come see your hygienist at least twice a year.
Yeah, I love this. This also becomes a great filtering practice building process that's bigger than retaining new patients. Because, and I could talk about this one for an entire hour because I love this. You as a dentist, number one, you don't need every patient. You don't want to be every a dentist for every patient. All you need is the right number of patients to build your practice. And depending on the practice style, a hygienist that works full-time only needs 750 patients if they're seeing them twice a year. Now, that's a generalization, but think about this. If my team is locked in on making sure the right new patients are calling and they're going through hygiene over time, 2 decades, I can filter this process so that we're inviting back the right people, encouraging the right referrals, and in no time, sooner than 2 decades, probably 3 years, you've got, if you're one doctor practice with 2 hygienists, you got 1,300 of the right type of patients where your annual patient value is north of $1,000, and now you're killing it. Like you're absolutely killing it instead of trying to capture everything. Because if your new patient numbers are through the roof and your new patient reappointment number percentages are below the roof, below the floor, you're filling the practice with terrible patients and wondering, when can I sell,
Right. Yeah. And I mean, new patients they take time and effort too. So giving them that experience and really having them return is an important piece.
Right. That's awesome. Now, take us through KPI number 6. What's that?
So KPI number 6 is the diagnostic percentage. And I'm speaking mostly in terms of dental intel. And so the way that Dental Intel measures that is it's taking the number of exams that a doctor does in a month, or a number of doctors do in a month, and it is how many of those exams, how many is something new diagnosed at. So the patient could have an existing treatment plan already. This is looking at what new was diagnosed out of there. So that diagnostic percentage is really important to take a look at, in that to have a good barometer of how many of your patients are leaving with treatment plans. And so, and how many are you diagnosing on? One thing I'm really seeing with this diagnostic percentage now is with how busy our hygiene programs are, is the need for more new people, or that the need for that mix of patients within your hygiene program to keep the doctors busy. So we've been operating at this really with our hygiene departments being overflowing for the last several years, and seeing that starting to really catch up with doctors and what they're able to diagnose when we don't have the proper mix of patients coming in, or we aren't creating space for new patients. We're not creating space to see some of our unscheduled active patients, which I know you love that number. And so when we don't create space to bring those people into hygiene, that diagnostic percentage can really be impacted by it. And that's our restorative schedule. And that's the doctor's productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're speaking my language. You guys, what Robyn just said is absolutely brilliant, and it's so important to your practice. And I'll give you a little tip here. One of the greatest things you can do is partner with one of your chairside assistants to make sure that they are responsible for tracking that percentage, because people left to themselves are not accountable. And again, you know who you are because I love you and this is you. Like, it's Mrs. Finelli. I go to church with her. I know she's got bone loss all on the left side. I don't want to talk about it because I sit right next to her every Sunday at church. And we talked about it 2 years ago, so you don't say anything. When you have somebody that can hold you accountable, again, to just talking about what's real, and you just have to tell people the truth. You don't have to sell them anything. This is not about hard selling. But when you get good at just telling people the truth over and over again, and you have a chairside assistant who holds you accountable to having that conversation, you're going to watch that percentage number climb. And Pete Dawson said it years ago. Gosh, Pete, I miss you. There's a practice within your practice of undiagnosed, dentistry that hasn't been discussed, and you're just afraid to talk about it. And that's so true. So the opportunity exists. And you know what happens when you diagnose more. It leads us to number 7. What's that?
So that's treatment acceptance percentage. And so that's looking at, again, in Dental Intel, it measures it in 2 different ways. It's measuring, one of them is measuring the people. So it's looking at the number of treatment plans that were presented, and then how many treatment plans something was accepted from the patient. So it's looking at people. And then the other one is looking at treatment dollars. So of those treatment plans, they were X amount of dollars, and this was the dollar amount that was accepted. So it's a way to look at both of those numbers and determine, are there areas of opportunity there? Is the treatment getting accepted to the percentage that we want it to be?
Right. So I'm going to have some fun with you. Robyn, my treatment acceptance is 100%. I don't need to track this. Now, we've heard this for more than 30 years. Okay, let's decode that conversation.
Well, I mean, that's not realistic, right? And I don't know that we're really shooting for 100%, right? I mean, we want to be able to give the patients the information that we have, diagnose what we see, and allow the patients to choose what is most comfortable for them. And so it gives you a look into, where are we doing well? A lot of times practices will look and they'll have the larger cases are the ones that they have a harder time getting patients to commit to. So it gives us an opportunity to break down that, what's happening, how are we treatment planning that? How are we presenting that to the patient? Let's take a look at that, at how that works. Are there areas of opportunity there that we can shore up on? Or are we giving patients so many options that they don't even know what to choose from? So the treatment plans are so large, we're telling them 3 different things. Are we giving them enough information to make a decision for themselves? So it allows us to dig into some of those things to really see where the opportunities are to increase that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I hope you're seeing through this. When you use these 7 KPIs to illuminate your practice health, what you can do is diagnose your business It's not just about tracking random numbers and seeing how much money we can make, but when you start with gross production, write-off percentage, net production, collections percentage, new patient reappointment percentage, diagnostic percentage, treatment acceptance percentage, you can literally say, this quarter, let's work on this number. Next quarter, let's work on improving. And by doing that, you create compounding effects on the overall health and result of the business. It's awesome when you can just, it also forces you to ask really good questions. You're like, I don't think it's that number. You know, even if you use an analytics software like Dental Intel, I get this one every week. Dental Intel isn't tracking this right. You're like, okay, whether it is or isn't, it allows us to ask better questions. Can you speak to that too?
Yeah, Dental Intel, what I know about it is it's code-based. And so it is, whatever is going into it is coming out. So
Right.
it gives us opportunities to really dive in. If you don't like the number, great. Let's figure out how to fix it. Let's figure out how to get it to something that you do like by being realistic about what's going on within the practice and really figuring that out.
Yeah. We have a great accountant here on our team. His name's Tom. And Tom's like, every number tells a story. Like, even if it's $1 or one metric, it tells you a little bit of a story, and you should always be improving every number, no matter what it is. Challenge yourself to say, hey, let's see if we can make that healthier. It's not about money. It's about making them continuously healthier. So, Robyn, you're brilliant. I'm going to have you back again and again. See, I didn't even ask you. I just told you. Give us some final takeaways on these numbers to improve our practice health.
Yeah, they're great. It's a great seven practices or 7 KPIs to really take a look at that gives you a bird's eye view to what's going on in the practice and areas of opportunity. I think numbers too are a great way to be able to celebrate with your team. When you get the numbers to where they are, it's an awesome place to celebrate and look back on where you were and where you are today and the efficiencies you've created through it.
Yeah, totally. And for me, I'm an eye on the disc profile. So a lot of things I do are as emotional, whether it be good or bad. When you have the right numbers that you're tracking, it helps you sleep better. You don't tell yourself a story about, you're like, no, I have the data and I know the data. And it allows us to have a clear, consistent conversations with the people around us about how do we make this better for everybody. So, if you're listening to the podcast, you're wondering, gosh, how can I don't know how to make this better. I'll just let you know, coming in the future, if you haven't been to our To the Top Study Club, I'm going to highly encourage you that you attend. And one of the sessions that we have in the future is going to be From Data to Dollars, navigating the numbers game, where we're going to take apart all of these numbers, actually show you your numbers, provided you let us see your numbers, and show you how to make them better over time. You can also reach out to Gina on our team, and she's awesome at this. She'll help you through a process where she'll help you see your practice and what opportunities exist, and we'll leave information down in the links that you guys can click on that. So if you weren't taking notes today, don't worry. This is how the podcast works. We're taking notes for you. You can flip up to the notes in Stitcher, iTunes, Spotify. Just click on the links right there. You're going to see everything that Robyn and I discussed. And Robyn, that was so much fun. Thank you again. I really appreciate you.
Thank you. It was a lot of fun. Looking forward to next time.
Absolutely. Stick around while we say goodbye to everybody else. But thank you guys for listening to the Best Practices Show podcast. Hey, if you enjoyed today, which I hope you did, please hit the share button, share this with your friends. Keep sending us suggestions for things you guys want to see. You're going to see. We're going to line them up for you so you guys can create a better practice and a better life. So until we see you guys next time or you hear from us next time, keep watching or keep listening to the Best Practices Show. You guys enjoy your day.